What happens when that new digital world you were promised, the one with all the freedom and ownership, turns out to be a complete minefield? And what if the only person who can really, truly protect you is you? Well, this is the story of a community that decided to stop waiting and start fighting back.
So, we've all been hearing about this big vision for the future, right? It's called Web3. And the easiest way to think about it is like this. The internet we use today is kind of like renting an apartment. A huge landlord, like a big tech company, owns the building and everything inside. But Web3 is the dream of finally owning your own house. You hold the keys, you own your digital stuff, and you decide who gets to come in. It's a really powerful idea, putting the user back in charge.
But just like any new frontier, this one is wild. It's dangerous. Having all that power and control comes with some massive risks. Scammers, hackers, basically modern-day bandits, are everywhere. They're just waiting for someone to make a mistake. So that incredible promise of ownership, it can turn into a total nightmare if you're not paying attention.
Now, you'd probably think the biggest threat in this new world is some super complex, futuristic kind of hack, right? Well, you'd be wrong. As this chart shows, the #1 weapon being used against people is something that's been around forever: good old-fashioned phishing. It accounts for over 43% of attacks. This classic scam has just been given a serious upgrade for Web3, and it's become the main way that criminals are tricking people into just handing over their most valuable digital assets.
And believe me, the stakes here are astronomical. We're not talking about a few bucks. One group alone tracked over $50 million worth of scammed and hacked NFTs. Unique digital things like art or collectibles. This isn't some tiny niche problem. It's a massive financial threat that can literally wipe out a person's digital life savings in a blink. So, the big question is, how on earth do you fight back?
Well, when you're facing a threat this huge, you can't just sit around and wait for some hero to swoop in and save the day. One community realized they had to create their own.
Let me introduce you to the Apecoin DAO. Now, DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, which is just a really fancy way of saying it's a group with no single boss. It's run by its members, the creators, the collectors, the fans, who all get to vote on decisions. But their popularity made them a massive target for scammers, and they got to a point where it was basically figure out how to protect ourselves or risk getting picked apart one by one.
And their solution all started with this simple but honestly brilliant idea. I love this mission statement from their proposal. The logic is crystal clear, right? Before we can even think about expanding and doing cool new things, we have to protect what we've already built. This was the moment Boring Security, the community's own guardian, was born.
So what exactly is Boring Security? Well, it's a nonprofit security project, and here's the key part. It's funded directly by the Apecoin community itself, through that DAO we just talked about. This is not some top-down corporation. It's a grassroots thing, for the people, by the people, designed to educate and defend its own members from that constant flood of scams and hacks.
Okay, so a cool mission statement is one thing, but how does that actually turn into real-world action? Let's take a look at how this community-funded group actually goes head-to-head with some pretty sophisticated online criminals.
This is a perfect example. Check this out. Back in December 2023, a popular platform called NFT Trader got hit, and a ton of valuable digital assets were stolen. Now, usually, this is where the story ends with a huge loss, but not this time. Boring Security jumped in, they took charge of the recovery, they directly negotiated with the hacker, and they actually managed to get the stolen assets returned. This wasn't some theoretical exercise. It was a high-stakes digital rescue mission.
And their work isn't just about reacting when things go wrong. They offer a whole bunch of services to stop things from going wrong in the first place. For instance, they audit the computer code behind new projects to look for weaknesses before the bad guys can find them. They're constantly monitoring for fake websites. And, as we must thank Soroush Ziaei for highlighting in his research, they focus heavily on what is probably the most important service of all: community education.
In fact, let's just look at some of their advice right now. This is practical stuff you can actually use. First up, always evaluate the team behind a project. Are they totally anonymous? Second, take a hard look at their roadmap. Does it seem realistic, or is it all just hype? Third, check for stolen art. It's easy, just use a reverse image search. And finally, watch out for those big red flags, like anyone promising guaranteed profits. As Soroush Ziaei always emphasizes, just understanding these basics is your first, best line of defense online.
But just as Boring Security was really proving how valuable it was, a massive plot twist came along that threatened its very existence.
And here it is, the gut punch. This is a quote from the CEO of Yuga Labs, the company that originally created the community's assets. In a pretty stunning move, he proposed to just dissolve the entire Apecoin DAO, the very organization that created and funds Boring Security, calling it unserious governance theater.
Ouch.
So the proposal is basically to replace the decentralized community-run DAO with a new corporate company called Apeco. That means shifting away from open community experiments to a much more traditional setup with professional managers. And here's the critical part. A change like that would cancel all the agreements the DAO made, including the one that keeps Boring Security running.
This just raises this huge, really precarious question. What happens to a vital community service like Boring Security when the very structure that brought it to life decides to just tear itself down and start over? It's a stark reminder of just how volatile these new decentralized ecosystems can be.
Okay, so let's zoom out. Let's connect this one story to the bigger picture. What's the main lesson we can pull from all of this?
And this brings us right back to where we started. It comes back to the core promise and the core challenge of this new decentralized world. When you don't have those big corporations acting as a safety net, all of the responsibility for security, it lands right on our shoulders. On us, the users.
And that's exactly why the story of Boring Security is so important. Honestly, whether the Apecoin DAO survives this whole proposal or not, its creation is this powerful lesson in community resilience. It proves that when the traditional institutions can't, or maybe won't, protect us, communities can, and they will organize to protect themselves.
So we're going to end where we began, with this one last question for you to think about. In a world where you hold the keys, who is ultimately responsible for keeping you safe? The answer, as Boring Security shows us, is probably a mix of our own awareness and the power of the communities we're a part of. It's something we all need to be thinking about.
So if you found this breakdown helpful and you want us to tackle more topics just like this, do us a favor and hit that like button. It really does help us out. And of course, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. And hey, if you have any questions or maybe an idea for a topic you want us to cover, drop it in the comments below. We read every single one. Thanks for tuning in.